Okay, so today's webinar, we're going to talk about trust structure options for married couples. And these specifically have to do with transfer tax and gift and estate tax, and also post-mortem control of assets. So to begin with, let's just talk about the current estate tax exemption, which is extremely high. It's $11.58 million per person. This means a person can have an estate worth $11.58 million, transfer it to their beneficiaries, and their beneficiaries will pay no tax, no estate tax. This also means that a couple can have an estate worth $23.6 million, and their beneficiaries similarly won't be taxed. This exemption amount, however, is absolutely subject to the control of Congress and whatever Congress feels like doing. Joe Biden, for instance, hasn't taken office yet, but he's already said he plans to lower the estate tax exemption to $3.5 million, which would have pretty significant consequences for quite a few of us. He's also discussed removing the step-up basis, which we'll talk about in a second. Okay, so this is the most simple way for a married couple to structure their trust. Here you see this is just the inter vivos revocable trust that's set up, which means it's revocable, meaning the trust terms can be changed. And the couple just set this up. It maintains this one entity situation. They pour their assets into this, and upon the death of the second spouse to die, the assets are simply dispersed to their beneficiaries, typically their children. It's very simple. There are no administrative requirements that are required for a more complicated trust structure. However, there are no tax planning implications for this at all. This is a bypass trust. This is somewhat more complicated. Here you have the revocable trust. The couple sets it up together. It's one trust, but upon the death of the first spouse to die, the revocable trust splits into two. Essentially, this can hold up to $11.58 million, which is the current federal estate tax exemption amount. It can grow and grow and grow and grow, and it's never going to be taxed again. This, or taxed at all, I should say, because it's already for the exemption amount. So this is pretty cool little thing here. It can be created, and assets in here can grow. This part is the, over here we have the surviving spouses portion. This becomes an irrevocable trust, which means the terms of the trust cannot be changed without court order. It also requires administrative requirements. This means that the trustee or the executor will have to do some tax filings for this every single year. It also means that it becomes its own little entity. Like I said, this asset, or the assets in this trust can grow and grow and grow with no tax consequences to the surviving spouse upon the surviving spouse's death. However, there is no step up basis for the assets that are held here. So step up basis refers to the value of an asset for principles of determining tax. So let's say if I buy a house today for $500,000, and let's say I sell it in 5 years for $1 million, the tax basis, the amount that I can be taxed is $500,000. You can get, taxed on your capital gains for that. Because this is considered outside this person's estate, it for step-up basis purposes, it does not get a step-up basis upon this person's death. But, in comparison with this plan, this all-to-spouse plan, upon the death of the second spouse to die, the assets held in here are going to get one major step up, right? So the value of the asset upon the death of the second spouse. This means that these guys are looking at potentially receiving that asset with a huge step up in basis, which means they can just sell it potentially tax-free or low tax if they want to. However, these beneficiaries will receive these assets with a large step up upon the death of the second spouse to die. However, as to the assets held here, the beneficiaries down here are not going to receive this with a large step up. I suppose it depends upon the timing, but assuming that these two do not go at the same time, these guys are looking at only like half of a step up in basis. A disclaimer trust is pretty cool. This gives the options of creating this trust structure, which we just talked about a second ago, like a bypass trust structure, if the surviving spouse elects to do that within 9 months. Unfortunately, 9 months of the death of the first spouse to die. 9 months is not a very long time when dealing with grief. I mean, it is a long time, but I think, emotionally, but I think that there's so much that happens during the wake of a loved one's death that it's something very easy to forget about. You only have 9 months to do it. So although, in a all-to-spouse plan, a disclaimer trust might be written in, just know that there are only 9 months with which to make that disclaimer. Spouses forget about this all the time. So just an FYI on that. So the other issue comes up with, let's say you're concerned, you and your spouse are together right now creating your revocable trust, and you're married, you have children, you've worked many years to get the property that you have and have accumulated lots of property or even one residence. And a concern comes up. What if one of you dies well before the other one dies? You certainly would want your spouse to maintain lifestyle that they've become accustomed to, but you ultimately want your children to get the house or your property, and you and your spouse agree on that. Then what enters into the picture is called the QTIP Trust, Qualified Terminable Interest Property. That's what it is. Okay, so again, similar to the bypass trust, the couple creates one revocable trust here during the joint lifetimes of each spouse. The spouses can amend the terms of this trust. However, upon death of the first spouse to die, this trust is then split into two. Here we have the survivor's trust here to our right. And then we also have the QTIP trust here. Similar to the bypass trust, this becomes irrevocable. However, contrary to the bypass trust, this for estate estate tax purposes is still considered part of the surviving spouse's estate. So this means, contrary to the bypass trust, assets that go in here can grow, hopefully will continue to grow, but they will not, but they will be taxed again upon this person's passing. However, also contrary to the bypass trust, the assets in here, because they're considered part of this person's estate, upon this person's estate, these assets in here will also receive a bump up in step-up tax basis. Now, getting back to controlling the assets held here, if a QTIP trust is created, then essentially the assets come in here, and this person has access to the assets, but does not have power of appointment, meaning that after the death of this person, this spouse cannot control the disposition of this person's estate. So the assets in here will simply be distributed to the beneficiaries upon the surviving spouse's death. It's very similar to a life estate, if you're familiar with that term. So those are the general properties of these different estate plans, these different trust structures. If you have questions, please reach out. Thank you.